Death, death to the IDF. It's the chant at Glastonbury that's been dominating the headlines. But should heads roll at the BBC, including the Director-General's, Tim Davie?
We speak to the Deputy Foreign Minister of Israel, Sharren Haskel, who tells us that it's time for Davie to consider his position.
I think if there's no one responsible for that, and if no one's going to be fired over such an outrageous thing, then Tim Davie should take responsibility and resign.
Free, free! Free, free! Free, free! Alright, but have you heard this one though? Death, death to the IDF! 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 Hell yeah, from the river to the sea, Palestine must be, will be, inshallah, it will be free.
Well, to discuss this now is Sharren Haskel, the Deputy Foreign Minister of Israel. What was your reaction to what happened in Glastonbury? Because it's posing serious questions now of BBC's management. We've had this outburst, the BBC now saying, oh, in retrospect, we should have cut the live stream and not had it on iPlayer. It follows a pulled documentary on Gaza because journalistic due diligence wasn't carried out and some of the sources appear to be Hamas linked. We've had a whole row here over the very well-paid former BBC presenter Gary Lineker. Should the Director-General Tim Davie consider his position, Ms Haskel?
Well, Camilla, I was absolutely outraged by what had happened on the festival. And just a couple of hours ago, the BBC pulled out their statement. And I have to say that it's absolutely pathetic. This is not a response that the team should have pulled out the plug. Who should have pulled out the plug? Who's responsible for that? This is literally someone calling for violence, for ethnic cleansing, for the destruction and the annihilation of the only Jewish state in the world. And what someone should have? So if there's no one that will take responsibility, if no one will be fired over such an outrageous thing, then I think that Tim Davie should take responsibility and put the keys to his position, because there has to be accountability for that. So many mistakes have been done. I mean, their coverage since the 7th of October should be investigated independently. There should be an inquiry in regarding to the BBC coverage. It was fully biased. Many mistakes were made. I think also not just, there should be an independent inquiry, but not just for the coverage since the 7th of October, but also about their coverage in the Middle East, and also about how they address anti-Semitism in the UK. How is it possible that something like that has been normalized in the UK? I just don't get it.
But just to clarify that, Ms Haskel, are you calling for Tim Davie's resignation at this point?
So I think if there's no one responsible for that, and if no one's going to be fired over such an outrageous thing, then Tim Davie should take responsibility and resign.
Okay.
Ms Haskel, Wes Streeting, who is the Health Secretary in Britain, was asked to respond to the Israeli embassy criticising the performance. And he said, again on the BBC, quote, Israel needs to get your own house in order, citing recent violence in the West Bank. How do you respond to what Mr. Streeting said?
Look, I have to say, obviously, I'm disappointed. I'm very disappointed, and I think that the Labour Party is in somewhat of a very difficult position. I think that obviously many of their seats are relying on a very small margin of voters. Many of their opponents are, independent Muslims, pro-Palestinians, who are very loud about that position. And so I hear from quite a few representatives like that who might be worried about their seat, might be trying to please their voters. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do think that the interest of the UK, the interest of humanity, obviously the issues of racism should come first. But when coming with politicians constantly trying to please, then you get remarks like that as well, I think.
When it comes to British Jews, the scenes that have unfolded, not just at Glastonbury, but actually since October the 7th, have been deeply disturbing for them. We've had a number of different surveys carried out by various groups, the Community Security Trust, the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, saying that there are many British Jews now questioning their own safety, questioning whether they want to remain in the UK. Some of them, despite all of the problems that Israel is currently facing with regard to missile strikes from Iran and everyone else, would like to move to Israel and would feel safer there than in the UK. It's troubling times, isn't it?
Absolutely. The rise of anti-Semitism is really worrying. Events like that, you ask yourself, how does racism, anti-Semitism has been normalized in the UK? The Jewish community feel threatened, violently been attacked. Camilla, Tim, and on a personal level as well. My cousin lives in London. Her daughter goes to a very good school in London. She was stabbed in the back with a little thing, like a needle, by a fellow student in school just because she's Jewish, and nothing was done to them. She is now studying, by distance. She doesn't want to go to her school anymore after these kind of incidents. So yes, the Jewish community feels threatened, violently attacked, and unfortunately there's not enforcement, and there's no accountability. And we've heard the minister and Minister Shikli call for many Jews to come home to their homeland, to their ancestral home. And obviously, as Israel, this is our indigenous land as Jews. And it's always, from the foundation of it, it was clear that this will always be a shelter for Jews. But you need to understand, the Jews will always have a place, a home, a shelter. What will happen to you, to white English Christians in the UK with everything that is happening and the changes that are happening right now? When you hear that rapper rapping in this festival with those chants of death, okay? What do you think his songs are about? As much as he hates Israel, he hates more the UK. He hates more England, the English culture. What was the song that he was singing about? You want your country back? I won't even repeat the curse that he said afterwards. What is that about? So you need to worry, as much as we worried about the Jewish community, there will always be a safe place for them. What will happen to you, to the average British citizen? You see what's happening in the street. You see the rise of violence. You see them marching down the streets of London. When they are burning or stepping on the Israeli flag, along with it, they are stepping and cursing and burning also the British flag and the American flag and any other flag that actually, what do they represent? They represent Western democracies with liberties, with women's rights, with freedom of speech, with freedom of religion. When did it become dangerous for Christians in Britain? I mean, I think it goes into such worrying levels that it's not just about anti-Semitism, but you need to be worried about your communities as well.
Ms. Haskel, can I just ask for clarity, because some of this hinges upon the phrase death, death to the IDF. Given that the IDF is a foreign army, and given that it's engaged in controversial military action, why, in the opinion of some people, is it anti-Semitic to say death to the IDF? Why, I assume you do interpret it to be anti-Semitic. Why should that slogan, in your view, apply to all Jews?
So first of all, there were two chants, and let's deep dive down into understanding that. The first one is death to the IDF. Israel has been fighting for the last 2 years against 6 different entities, terrorist organizations who want to massacre, butcher, obliterate every single living Jew in Israel. The only thing standing between the terrorist organization Hamas and between Jews being butchered is the IDF. The only thing standing between Hezbollah, a terrorist organization that's committed to the obliteration of the state of Israel and murdering Jews, is the IDF. The only thing between the murderous, vile regime of Iran calls death to Israel. It calls also death to the UK and death to America. But the only thing standing between that death call and Jewish people being massacred is the IDF. So when you are calling for the death of the IDF, it means you are calling for the obliteration of the safety net or the guardians or the protection of Jews in the only Jewish state. Most of us, all Israelis, particularly Jews, are serving in the IDF. I served in the IDF. It's mandatory for Jews to serve there. What does that mean to you? And the other sentence, which calls for, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Look, the fact is, this chant calls for the entire, so from the river to the sea refers to the entire state of Israel. It doesn't call for a compromise, but it calls for the entire state of Israel to be liberated from Jews. That's what this slogan actually means. And so this is a genocidal chant. That's why it's been forbidden. And you know, for example, in Germany to chant that, because it calls for the genocide of Jews. So how would you either refer to it if not racist, genocidal chants against the Jewish people?
Sharren Haskel, thank you very much indeed for joining us on the Daily Tea.
Thank you very much.